Welcome to the third episode of the Guitar Power Hour, sponsored by Rock Life Music Academy, with me, your host, Alex Boccia. Today's guest is Dave Angstrom of the rock bands Hermano and Luna Sol. I first found out about Dave when by chance I saw his band, Luna Sol, and was just completely blown away. The band was tight, and their tone was perfectly dialed in. But I immediately dug their tunes and was really impressed by Dave's guitar playing. It was raw, dirty, and expressive, but still controlled and intentional. I could tell he had true skill and was definitely one with his instrument. This interview is unique compared to the other interviews I have done so far, because I have never exchanged more than a few words with Dave at his shows. So I was hearing his stories for the first time, just as you are. Dave has a very philosophical and spiritual view on music and playing guitar, so prepare to be enlightened. Here it is.
Getting started again. So, like, what sparked it in the first place? The wanting to learn guitar.
Well, my oldest brother, Mark, was really into music, rock music, and he was a bit of a heathen.
Older brother story, classic older brother story.
Yeah, and
getting
so
into music, huh?
Yeah, and I wanted to, and I would literally go down to his room and steal his records, you know, when he wasn't home or he's out riding his bike, and I fell in love with Kiss early on. It was like, they're just magical, you know, and like, I want to be that. Like, how do I make that sound?
Right.
And so we did the whole, you know, banging on ice cream tubs and tennis rackets and all that as kids, and singing along in the basement. And I just, in fifth grade, you could play an instrument in Kentucky. And Kentucky is a great place, and I love it, but it's definitely backwards, and it especially was back then, you know, like late 70s. And
just kind of all around?
Yeah.
Just like anywhere you could be, you could experience that, or certain areas, certain spots?
Certain areas outside of the main cities, but even in the main city, there's an undertow of, you know, there's definitely a change now that's happened, but where I grew up, you know, I saw a cross burning from the Klan.
Really?
The Klan marched in the Christmas parade when we were kids.
Okay, so that kind of backwards.
Yeah, and you see stuff like that, and I mean, we knew, obviously it was wrong, and my parents were from Chicago, and like, this is ignorance, and they would immediately educate us on how wrong it was, but it was weird when you see stuff like that, you know. So I wanted to play music, and I had a couple friends, and we had our own Kiss band that we made up in fourth grade, you know, like Kiss Kids, and we were all going to be Peter Criss because we thought he didn't get enough love, you know. So
just one big band.
Yeah, just one big band of Peter Criss, and it made sense when we were in fourth grade, you know. And I remember getting in trouble because we were passing notes around about our band, and my teacher, Mrs. Simmons, who I didn't like at all.
But you guys didn't play anything yet,
We didn't play anything. Okay. It was all marketing, man. I love that side of the business, which is why I do what I do for work. But I was like, you know, I was designing T-shirts for us and all kinds of stuff, you know, like, we're going to do this. And we got in trouble for talking about it and had to go to the principal's office. And instead of that being like a turn off for me, I was like, oh, right on, because I've always been a nerd, you know, and just kind of quiet, and not quiet, I'm not quiet at all, but just a nerd and a little outcast, and had a couple friends, but I wasn't definitely in the popular crowd, you know. And if there is a popular crowd in Kentucky, but you know, and so getting in trouble sparked something where I was like, well, that's kind of cool, like, I don't get in trouble, like, you know.
Right.
So in fifth grade, you could play music, and the only thing I could think to play in the band, like the little orchestra that they had in school, was like Aqualung and play the flute. You know, like, oh, there's flute in Stairway to Heaven, there's some flute, you know, Jethro Tull, like, I'll play flute, man.
Closest thing to rock and roll.
Yeah, I could get in a band, this is going to be right on. And I remember, like, I mean, my teacher in 10th grade, Mr. Allen, was like a really cool teacher, man. Just one of those people that you still, like, you know, at my age, I still connect with, like, his kindness and what he was really trying to give something to the kids, you know, as opposed to just teaching you something.
Absolutely.
He was a great teacher, man. And I was going to him the first week, like, dude, when do we sign up for band? And he's like, Dave, I'll tell you when you can sign up for band. Like, it's going to be a while. And I would ask him every week, and every Friday he'd be like, I know, I don't know when they're going to let us sign up. I keep asking him. Yeah, it's totally, are we there yet? And finally, he came to me one morning. He's like, you're going to be so happy. Today you can sign up for band. And I was like, right on. And so we had this whole thing. We would go down to the band room, and I signed up for flute. And the band director came over. He's like, well, I heard you like music. Your teacher said you really like music. I was like, oh, yeah, man, I love music. And he's like, well, boys don't play flute. So he made me play trombone. And I was like, well, that's not cool. I even wanted to play like flugelhorn, because there's a picture of Ace Frehley somewhere playing like a baritone, or what's it called? Not a baritone. There's another, I can't remember. It's in one of the brass instruments. And Ace Frehley played it when they went to Detroit and did some march. So I was like, I'll play that. He's like, we don't have one of those. Like, you're playing trombone. Shut up. So I instantly was like, okay, well, that sucks. I'm not going to get what I want out of music here. So I started bugging my parents.
Did you do that, though?
I did, yeah. I played trombone. Okay. I was first chair trombone all through school, and it was fun. I loved being in band. I loved, like, the camaraderie and hanging out with other people that got music,
Yeah.
We learned a lot about Pink Floyd on those band trips and kind of hanging out. And
really?
It was really cool, yeah. Huh. We would just sit around and listen to different... We were way into, like, Cactus, and Johnny Winter was a huge influence, and we listened to all kinds of stuff in the band trips.
So what, just for reference, what year range was this again?
Well, I was 10 then, so that had to be 78. I was born in 68. I'm 48 now. Okay. So, yeah, I was
maintaining the youth, man.
Yeah. Oh, I'm old, dude. I've been all around. So, like, starting in that space, I was so disappointed. Like, I thought I was going to get this instrument and then start a band.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen, so I was bummed. And then, I still played music. I wanted to learn, to read and write. And I finally bugged my parents on my 10th birthday. They gave me a guitar, this Applause Ovation that I was telling you about. It's just an Ovation copy.
Yeah.
And they were like, hey, if you take lessons for 3 months in a row every week and you don't miss one, we'll buy this for you. And so I was like, well, that's freaking done. And so I wrote my very first song, like, before my parents took us to Pizza Hut, which we had no money. So going to Pizza Hut was a big deal, And
right.
My dad's like, taking the family to Pizza Hut for your birthday. And I was like, no way, I'm playing guitar. And I'll never forget, he, like, picked me up off the bed by my neck almost. It was like, get in the car. I was like, yeah, that's cool. Like, we'll pick this up later.
No argument for me.
Yeah, and he's not like that at all. But he was, like, so frustrated because I was fighting him and I never fought him on stuff. So I think having that and having to beg for it, and I did mowed lawns and all kinds of stuff. Like, to get my first MXR Distortion Plus, I had to mow 3 yards to get it for $10 from this guy that was in a band with my brother called Thor's Hammer. I like went to him and I was like, I want that pedal because Randy Rhoads uses that.
That guy must have been really cool being in a band called Thor's Hammer.
I know, how cool is that? Thor's Hammer.
Did you know this guy? He's in a band called Thor's
Yeah,
Hammer.
they were metal, dude. They were so badass. Yeah, I loved them.
So you said you took lessons
first
before they bought you the guitar?
I took lessons at the time. Like, they rented the guitar and I had to take lessons with it and as a rental. And then I kept taking lessons. I met a really cool teacher, a guy named Jeff Sexton. And you actually look a lot like him. When I first saw you before, I was like, that's so bizarre,
almost.
Man. Yeah, I was really kind of like, weird.
Yeah.
And he was just a really cool, again, kind person and a great teacher. Very patient, but he knew, like, what I liked. And so I would come in with the guitar and he was like, well, I'm going to show you some chords on that because I know your parents want to teach you that. But then he would give me his SG and be like, all right, you want to learn Cat Scratch Fever, don't you?
I play SGs too.
Do you? Oh, it's a trip.
That's weird.
That's totally bizarre. Yeah, I'll have to find a picture of him and bring it out. I've got one somewhere in the paper. We were in the paper together. So, like, that kind of was cool for me too as a kid. It's like, wow, he gets it. He knows music and he knows I want to rock.
You said this was about age 10?
Yeah, that was still 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that like for as far as your perception on lessons at the time? Was that something that for you was like, you just wanted to play guitar so bad and that was part of the deal, so it was just like whatever I got to do sort of thing? Or did you have a separate opinion on lessons or not really much opinion? Where were you at with that?
I was starved to play, and I couldn't wait to get to the lessons.
Right.
I would carry that guitar and literally take it to school and walk to the music store and hang out there, you know, after I got to know them enough, and my parents met the people that owned the music store, which at the time was Billingsley Music, but became Backstage Music. And like all of us, the Kentucky Headhunters, all the kids from, well, they're not kids anymore, Blackstone Cherry guys, Chris and all those guys, they're all from there. They used to open for us all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
They're good, great guys and good friends. But yeah, so I think lessons-wise, I really couldn't wait. And I think at that age, I loved it. When I got older and I was in college, I took more of like Felix Papillari's comment of, I studied 8 years in college and it took me, or I studied 4 years and it took me 8 years to forget the crap they taught me so I could go back to just playing.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that the difference on the lessons for me was getting the core understanding and having really a good teacher. And I went, like I took from Greg Martin, from the Headhunters, a couple of people, and those were the times that I really wanted to do it. In college, when I would study guitar, they would only teach classical, you know.
Right.
And I remember going to college and at UK, and I only went there because there were bars. There were two schools at the time in Kentucky that I had an option of: Western, which is in Bowling Green, that had 1 bar, and the University of Kentucky that had like 10 bars that I could play. You know, I didn't want to drink; I just wanted to play music. So I was like, dude, I could play all those bars. So I went there with my friends, you know, and I remember my mom, the dean of the guitar, who ended up being really cool and we got along really well, but he was laughing because he wanted me to play something and he gave me a classical, and I started playing blues. You know, I was playing Robert Johnson stuff, and he was just like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, I'm playing.
Stop that right now.
Yeah, he was, I mean, he was insulted that, you know, like, and he goes, "Do you know any classical?" And I was like, "Well, no, I mean, I can learn it, but I don't know any classical." And he really looked down on me, and it was the first time in my life that my mom, and the only time that I can really remember, where she really, I mean, she was in the room and she was like, "What makes you think you're a better guitar player than him?" Talking to the teacher about me. And it was like, as a kid, I was like, I wasn't a kid, I was probably 18 at that point. Right. And it felt so good. It was like, wow, I didn't think she even got what I do. Yeah. You know, that, because I played, and I've played shows when I couldn't wait to play my first show. You know, like as soon as I started taking lessons, I was ready to make t-shirts and start rocking. Yeah. So it was really kind of cool to see those different stages. Totally. And now I'm at a place where I'd like to take lessons again to learn like a completely different style of playing. Yeah. You know, like I think that's really important. I'd really like to play more of, I don't know, there's so many different styles that I want to do, but I'd like to get more into like a bluegrass tied with more of Tom Waits. Really? You know, like I love Tom Waits. I love Tom Waits too. Yeah. I feel like I can do one thing, and I know that's not true. I consider myself a hack very much. I see myself more as a songwriter than a guitar player. Which I remember when that like switch happened, I was actually kind of bummed because people at labels were like, "Oh, your songs and the way you arrange," and I was like, "What are you talking about, dude? Have you heard me on a Firebird? Like, you know, I can shred." And they're like, "Yeah, nobody cares about that. Yeah, write a song." Right. So that was a weird transition too, but yeah.
Well, I want to come back to that and talk more about where you're at now and stuff. I definitely want to hear about that. But
yeah, sure.
Back to that thing, the time where you're taking lessons, and you'd started a band before, and then you made a comment that, you know, you were ready to play your first show and stuff. So you started taking lessons, and then what was the next thing that, you know, the next significant thing that happened? And also I want to know about, like, what was that learning experience like for you as far as how fast you felt like you picked up on it? And it sounded like something you said earlier, you did pick up on it pretty quick, but I'm just curious about that stage now after the lessons kind of got started.
Okay. I think, you know, when I was a kid, like I said, I lived for music. I felt like an outcast. I had to play sports, and I hated it. I didn't connect with most of the people there. I didn't connect. Like, in 6th grade, I went over to my friend Tim Glover's house, this black guy that's a friend of mine, and our town was literally segregated. You know, not officially, but it was. Right. And I went to his house, and his grandfather screamed and like getting him out, and he played bass. And so like we were going to start a band, like, well, let's jam. And I got in trouble because I was a white kid in his house, you know, and that was not cool. And so it was weird. It was really
I can't
weird.
relate to that.
No, a lot of people can, and where I grew up, it was bizarre, man. I knew it was bizarre, and I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know what to do about it until I
yeah.
got older, just to have a voice about it and not accept the ignorance of it, you know.
Yeah.
But when you're a kid and you're 10, 11 years old, it's like, what the hell? What do you mean I can't come over and hang out? Like, we're going to jam.
It's my friend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like we hang out every day in school all day. Like,
Right.
and what do you mean? So he, like, that experience was kind of life-changing for me in a way of just being trying to be a good person and do right. You know, like I wanted to do that. I haven't always done that. I've definitely had days where I haven't been the best me that I should be.
You're only human, right?
Yeah, well, and I've had a lot of fun, and that fun gets it down a dark path, so I've done that. And I think that the next, really in that phase, was in 6th grade. What used to be the all-black school, they had recently made that into a middle school, because they weren't legally allowed to have black and white schools anymore.
Right.
So, like, I didn't know any of this. I had lived in Illinois and Pennsylvania and came to Kentucky, and I was like, what are they? This is completely bizarre.
Yeah.
And so,
especially not growing up around it, right?
Yeah, because I'm already formed at that point.
Right.
You know, well, I'm forming, but I still had already a good core.
Sure.
My parents are great people, and my family are great people. You know, and so I kind of had goodness rooted, you know, from the beginning. And when you see all this and this anger and hatred amongst each other, it was bizarre to me. So anyway, I ended up going to the 6th grade school, which was completely separated from the other schools because of what it had been created for. And they kind of put anybody in all the different 5th grade schools into that, and then they meld everybody together, and then we all go to junior high school together. That's how it works in Kentucky, or in Glasgow, where I'm from. And in 5th grade, at the end of 5th grade, they pull all the bands together, and we had to perform as like a whole orchestra. And I remember this drummer, John McGee, and I went over to him and I was like, hey, and there were 2 drummers, John McGee and David Barrick. And I wanted to play drums too, and of course that was like everybody and their brother signed up for drums, but I was trying to get on the flute. Like, I totally lost my place in line.
Such an unusual story there.
I was so bummed, like, dude, I want to play drums then. No. So I went over to them, and I think one of them like had a Rush shirt or something on, you know, and we were like, oh, hey, I dig
This guy's cool.
yeah, like, hey, dude, what's up? You know, I go to this school. We're all going to be in school next year. And we kind of just hit it off. And we ended up starting a band in 6th grade. I think the summer, like, overs before getting to 6th grade, we just kind of would talk and hang out. And David's parents owned a radio station, the rock radio station in town, and a country, but we were really into the rock station.
Yeah.
And so we would just hang out there at his parents' house or the station and spend the night and just camp out and just like be around music. And then Johnny's stepdad's Greg Martin, who's now the guitar player from the Kentucky Headhunters. And if you don't know who he is, dude, go check him out. Gibson just released his custom shop Les Paul, and they made a limited edition of him. I mean, he's
Kentucky Headhunters.
Yeah.
And his name was
Greg Martin.
Greg Martin. Okay.
Yeah, Greg is probably the nicest guy on the planet and has the most amazing tone I've ever heard in my life.
Really?
Yeah, and he taught me for a bit. And he is so amazing as a guitar player. You should definitely interview him sometime. I mean,
Cool.
I'm chopped liver, dude. Greg's like Clapton, and people write to, you know, when their first album came out, they wrote to him and were like, what the hell?
Really?
Dude? You are phenomenal.
And this was this the same guy that you started taking lessons with?
No,
Okay.
Greg was
I
different, and
forgot
I
the
took
name was.
lessons from Greg for just a few, and then he was like, you should teach, you know.
Okay.
Greg's phenomenal, man, and I think at the time he was playing on like cruise ships, you know, and just anything he could to do play his guitar, he would just go play. And so we would get to see Greg come in, but he had this massive record collection, so Trapeze and Cactus and Mountain and all this stuff that, you know, nobody else was really listening to. It became like our underground world. So me and David Barrick and John McGee would listen to this stuff, and we played our first gig in 6th grade. You know, of course, I had to get a manager. We had a manager, this girl Elizabeth that I had a crush on. You know, I was like, you can be our manager. So you're around all the time.
Right.
And so we jammed at her house, and her grandfather fixed old jukeboxes and stuff, so he would give us different speakers for our amps to try out. And so we were always getting to work on tone. and going and hanging in the music store every week, all the time. I mean, my parents would just drop me off for days or hours. I mean,
so the search for tone started way back then, even.
No doubt.
Because you definitely have. I could tell that you've spent time when I listened to your band play.
Well, thanks.
Yeah,
that's to me the coolest compliment.
That was specifically one of the things that blew me away, and I think I even said it to you when I first met you in that first show that I saw you at. Was the tone. It just like everything was just so well balanced.
That's cool.
And I knew, because it was at Three Kings, I'm like, I knew Three Kings, like they didn't have that great of a sound system. Like, I'm like, this has to be the band behind this, you know.
Yeah. So that's
anyway,
cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And that all started in that music store too. I mean, at that same time we were like getting to try different speakers and having the record collections at Greg Martin's house, but then also anything that was ever put out was at the radio station.
Mm-hmm.
So we were hanging out at WOVO, this little station in Glasgow, and we ended up we were DJing at night because we were there so much. They'd be like, you can just DJ, and we'd be like, all right, this is Mountain, and playing just like obscure cuts, and
have you ever heard that story of Bill Gates having that access to that computer thing? Have you ever read the book Outliers?
No.
It's a cool book, and it's just got some stories about how some successful people got their start and the unique situations they had that helped mold their beginnings of success or a crucial stage. Or the Beatles with their Hamburg experience.
Oh yeah.
This kind of seems like this was your special thing that was really helping to mold you, huh?
I feel very blessed to have grown up where I did, even with the undertow, some of the stuff that was there, the racism that was kind of, wasn't spoken about, but was definitely part of existence there. That was so minimal compared to all the magnolia trees and the amazing people and the neighbors that were down the street that if you were out after dark, they would literally smack you in the head and tell you to get home. That lifestyle kind of helped mold who I became as a man, I think.
Yeah.
And then musically, I mean, I literally got to sit and listen to, Newgrass Revival, who became Bluegrass Revival, probably some of the best bluegrass players in the world, Sam Bush and Courtney Johnson, and even Kenny Weber that ended up buying the music store. He was such a huge influence. These just amazing players, and it was great because Greg Martin told me one day when I was just a kid, I was like, dude, I want to be. He's like, what do you want? I was like, Aerosmith. I want to be Zeppelin. I want to be Kiss, man. He's like, I want to rock. And he was like, Dave, you just love to play guitar. And I was like, I do, yeah. And he was like, well, the best musicians in the world are sitting on a porch. He was like, they don't care. They're not out, trying to tour the world. I was like, well, cool, I'd like to meet them, but I don't want to get on a tour bus. No, I mean, I definitely had that drive as a kid and all through my 20s and 30s.
And this unique experience of opportunity of being able to even essentially DJ, like you were saying.
Yeah, who gets to do that?
It's crazy.
Yeah, we used to just sit
at a time where that was a big thing too.
Oh,
it
was
not
rocking.
Like today, DJing today, whatever. That was a time where being a DJ was a cool thing, I imagine. I mean, it wasn't around then, but
it was awesome.
Yeah,
it was and we wouldn't play you had to play certain songs, and then we would slip in whatever we wanted, Right. So we're playing Frank Zappa on this, small, local country radio station that was really a hub musically for so many now very successful bands out touring the world. I mean, a lot of us from that area have seen the world because we play music, and it all stimulated and began in that radio station and that music store.
Yeah, that's cool.
We all gravitated there and hung out, and I just listened. I remember one time that Courtney Johnson from the Bluegrass Revival, he was like, hey, and this guy is just absolutely phenomenal. They could play anything. They would sit and drink moonshine and play, and just blow my mind. Because bluegrass is, if you were a good player, it's phenomenal to just sit and watch it. And he was asking me one time, and they would laugh at, me and Johnny and David, because we were always there. We would paint the walls on the music store to get enough money for mics. So, we would work to get gear, Cool. Kenny Weber would let us do that, which was really cool. So not everybody has that experience, We would come to your space and be like, okay, what can we work on today? We'll tear down those posters and paint that wall and do this, and I'll give you this guitar, And it's in a trash bag you got to take home and build it, but, you can have it. So we had to work for stuff, and that was really cool, But Courtney was like, okay, he told Johnny and I to play him what we like, you know, and Kenny was there. And Kenny Weber was a big influence in my life that owned the music store eventually. And we put on Kiss, you know, we're like, well, right on. We're going to finally show you guys. And they had a turntable right on the counter of the music store. That's how cool it was, you know. And we're always listening to music, so I put on Kiss, and they listened to the whole side of, I think it was Kiss Alive 1. No, none of them made a judgment. You know, they all sat and listened to it. And I know they had to, now knowing how Ace Frehley plays, and which a lot of people love Ace Frehley. He's a part of my life for sure. But
right.
Do I think he's, you know, Hendrix? No way in hell, you know. But I can't imagine what these master players thought. You know, these little 12-year-old kids, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids were playing. And then the only thing they said then were like, well, they're super country. And they're like, well, if you're going to listen to rock and roll, at least listen to some good shit. And they put on Johnny Winter and I immediately was like, what the hell? Like, so musically, they help craft, like, be a good player. And what they always told me, especially Kenny Weber, was don't be somebody else. Like, find who you are and play like you. Right. And he said the ultimate compliment you'll ever have in life is when somebody hears you, they know it's you. That's how you know you've become the player you want to be.
How did you interpret that? Because that's like one of those cool, like, kind of esoteric pieces of advice, you know? Mm-hmm. How did you interpret that at that age?
I just kind of looked, because I was way into Clapton and Hendrix at that point, and Jimmy Page and Leslie West, and obviously once they told me about Johnny Winter, I was huge. I mean, I've played the Firebird for years. I love Johnny Winter. I could hear when I put on any record by any of them, or if they were sitting in on somebody else's record, especially like Jimmy Page, or even Johnny Winter on like Muddy Waters, Hard Against, one of my favorite records. But when you put that on, like, I know what's Johnny Winter and what's Muddy Waters, and I always thought
sometimes just by one note you can
right. Even the way they play a chord, you know, it's like, wow, that's pretty cool, man. And that's how I took it. I mean, I knew the difference of those players for what I was listening to, and so I wanted to find that sound for myself. And I didn't know where to find that, and it was a journey that I probably will be on till the day, you know, Jen scatters my ashes somewhere, you know. Like, I think that's part of the fun of the whole thing. Yeah, is like, just be real about what you're doing and have your own life to it, you know.
And you evolve as a person, so it's only natural that everything else should evolve with it. Anything from your style of playing to even the tone, you know, and just not just still searching for the new thing, but just because you're changing as a person.
Yeah, that is a big part of it.
Yeah. So what happened with the band then at that stage?
Well, we just kept growing, and
did you guys play shows yet or anything?
Yeah, I think our first show, the first show we played actually was in 7th grade. Not 6th, it was in 7th, and it was for the principal of the school. I had dated his daughter. No, she's a great person, but I found out after.
Don't mess that up.
Yeah, I know, and he was so cool, Mr. Twyman, but he had all these vintage Fenders. He played in some
cool,
like, gospel church band, but I mean, like, old school blackface tweed amps, and we went over there a couple times. We hung out. I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. So we started kind of. He got to know that, hey, I'm, you know, who I was, and that I was completely, you know, naive to the ways of actually dating, you know, at that. She was a friend of mine, and her dad had these cool guitars, and that was cool. So, and I think he respected that. So he would actually call me up to his office one day in school, and I didn't know what was going on. He was like, hey, I know that you and Johnny and David have this band. We're going to have a Coke party. Why don't you guys play? And we're like, well, sweet. So we did like Caress of Steel from Rush. We did all these songs that nobody in our school had any idea of what the hell was going on. We had this old Shure Vocal Master PA, and we just sat and played like 5 or 6 songs, and that was the beginning.
What was this called? A Coke party? Or
Just Coca-Cola.
Oh, Coca-Cola.
Yeah, okay. So it was hey, it was the end of the year. Oh, yeah.
Excellent.
They don't have coats in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Those are fancy. So yeah, Mr. Twyman like gave us a gig and let us play, and that was the first time. I mean, before that, David's parents had a really huge garage, like almost a barn, and we made our own light show and just kind of hung out there and just learned how to play music.
Yeah.
You know, that was, but that was the first gig, and we were called Aftermath, but I thought they meant like after math class. I had no idea what an aftermath was. Our drummer came with the name.
Another strange coincidence. I have a student the band just recently broke up, but they were called the Aftermath too.
Really? I still have my shirt.
Really?
Yeah.
Sweet. That's awesome. How did you guys do those? Did you just make it yourself, or what?
We went to Ryherd Sports Shop where they did all the jerseys in town with the iron-on letters. You know?
Okay.
And my mom took me over there and was like, "Y'all get you a shirt." So I'd saved up my money and we got a cool
nice
green 3/4 sleeve jersey. I was rocking. I thought I was. So yeah, we did that, and then it was like after that, it was just playing friends' parties, and then what became the Headhunters, Itchy Brother, kind of took us under their wings, and when they would play these big parties, we would get to open for them.
Sweet.
And that was powerful.
So really, just kind of throwing yourself. I don't even know if it was. It seems like it was intentional. It was just kind of. You had this passion naturally. You just kind of ended up getting involved in this community of people.
Yeah, I wanted to play so badly, and I was just very blessed that I literally was around masterful players who were just very good, you know, rich as souls.
Right.
Not financially, but just rich people
that
are still a part of my heart and my life and who I am.
What a cool experience, man.
Yeah, I'm really lucky, man.
I don't think that's something that... even if you wanted to, you could really find just anywhere. It's almost maybe like a weird fate thing.
Yeah.
In some way. I don't know. Tell me what your practicing was like about then. So now you're trying to get good at guitar, right?
Oh, yeah.
What was that like for you?
All day, every day. I can remember sitting on the couch with my dad watching movies and just doing vibrato. Just every finger, every fret, every string, and I wanted to sound like B.B. King. Because I figured if I tried to sound like B.B. King, I couldn't sound like B.B. King, so I'd come up with my own sound, is what I told myself. And so, but I loved his style. Yeah, I loved his style of vibrato. And
interesting that you chose to focus on that. And this is what age? Still around that 10, 12?
Yeah, 10, 11, and 12, yeah.
That's interesting that you chose that to focus on. I think a lot of people miss that, actually.
Yeah.
Even for a very long time, the importance of something like that. It's just how such a little thing can add so much character and color.
Yeah.
And can take you from sounding like an amateur player to someone who's really expressive, but that you picked up on that at that age.
I don't know that I did that on purpose as much as I just liked the way it sounded, and I liked the way Johnny Winter did a vibrato, but I knew that I needed to have that ability to do what I wanted.
Yeah.
I could play chords, I could, I had won third place in the 6th grade talent show, and I was bummed about that. I was like, stupid talent show people.
If you ain't first, you're last.
So I was just glad to do it. I'm just kidding. But I remember like doing that and being like, wow, that was really scary. And knowing that, like, I felt like I could do the chords. I knew I could sit with my friends and we could learn songs. And that's all we did. We would just sit around. We would stay up all night, and we would take coffee and tea. In fact, David Barrick's like a world-renowned record producer. He's helped Black Stone Cherry like all their big hits. That's Dave.
Yeah.
He actually bought the music store that we ended up growing up in. He bought that, turned it into a studio, so people fly from all over to record with him.
Cool.
But he just texted me literally last weekend, was like, dude, I was over at my mom's and I couldn't stop thinking about us running around in our underwear with Stratocasters and making our night drinks, because we would take tea and coffee and just grind it up and then put a little water so it was like mud and just over caffeinate ourselves, and then we would do that so we could stay up all night, and we would just learn, whatever we wanted to that night, and we would put on records and slow them down and stop them and figure out the riffs together.
Right, you had that ability to do that with a record player.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh man, we did that constantly. We tore so many records and needles up.
It lowered the pitches though too, didn't it?
Yeah.
How did you work around that?
Well, we would have to, like, we would know what key it was in, and we would kind of know most everything was written box. Like, I was really into blues bass rock, you know, from Cream to whatever. So we knew kind of the positioning that it was in.
Right.
So we would listen to it, and then we would slow it down to hear the minutia of it, you know, and then go, oh, that's what they're doing. They're doing a little turn there on the seventh that we didn't know. We even never would have called it seven. We didn't know what the hell it was. But we'd be like on the third finger on the third fret, you know, on the four strings. And we're like, oh, there it is. So we would look at that stuff and go, oh, and then we would just kind of sing it and make sure that we got it right. Sometimes we did. I'm sure sometimes we didn't. And I don't think that we really cared if it was perfect. We wanted it to sound like us. So it was kind of like, man, we can play Mountain, or we can play the Police, or we can play Rush, and you know. And I'm sure we were nowhere near. You know, we weren't trying to be a tribute band. We were trying to create our own sound.
Right. Just trying to pick up from learning these other bands' songs to understand what. Well, you tell me, how was that? What did you try and pull from those songs when you were learning them to make your own sound?
I wanted to. All I ever listened to was guitars, and that's not necessarily 100% true, but that's really my focus for sure. My son and I were just talking about that because he writes and plays now, and he's always talking about the lyrics, and my wife always talks about the lyrics, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that's what they're saying. She's like, it's the Beatles, seriously? And I was like, do you hear what George Harrison's doing? Like, that's wicked cool. So like, I think I wanted to get that energy from the sound of that guitar. Like, how do I do that and do it myself? But then as soon as I learned the riff, I didn't want it to sound like that player. I wanted to make it sound like me, because I had been told that, you know.
These are deep goals for a kid your age at the time.
We were just kids, man.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we did it, like, we didn't see it as a goal. We just knew that, like, hey.
This was just instinctive.
But I guess really, to be honest, now that I'm saying it, I knew that ultimately we were going to the music store and we would play, you know, and they would listen to us play, and I knew that that was the challenge. Sound like you.
Is a really interesting point there.
And I don't think I ever realized that is it.
That expectation was set that helped motivate you.
Yeah, it totally motivated us.
Which is a really good point, again, because, you know, hopefully people are picking things up from these interviews that are helping them to get over hurdles and stuff and learn the instrument. And you know, that's one of the things about lessons, just, and you can find it in other ways too, but just having somebody creating that, whether intentionally or not, whether it's, you know, that individual, like a teacher saying, go home and do this and show me next week, or whether it's just someone that you want to impress because you look up to them or whatever, and they never say, you know, show me this by next week or something. You just want to show it to them, but there's always that some expectation there that helps that person learning to want to be motivated to accomplish it.
I did that with my teachers.
Yeah.
No doubt. And if I hadn't had lessons, I never would have gotten the start that I got. No way. Because I had a good, caring teacher, Jeff Sexton, and then I was surrounded by, you know, Richard and Greg and these just amazing players, you know, and I learned really different things from lessons too, from different people, you know, like Richard Young's in the Kentucky Headhunters, but he's got big curly blonde hair, but when he was a kid, they were on Swan Song. Their manager actually ran Swan Song, which is Led Zeppelin's label. People don't know that. And Mitchell Fox, who's still their manager to this day, he ran Swan Song. And so we used to have a thing. There used to be a thing in the music store. There was a picture of Richard and Robert Plant, and they looked identical because Richard used to sing for Itchy Brother, which was what they were called when they were kids. And he took me, and he always played Telecasters and different guitars, and Greg always played Les Paul. So I was always like, I want to play like Greg. Like, Ace Frehley plays Les Paul. I'm going to play like Greg. And Greg's an amazing player. And Richard is too, but it was funny because I took a lesson from Richard. I took several lessons from Richard, and Richard showed me how to make an A chord the American way and the English way. And he goes, now isn't the English way much more fun? And where he just laid his finger down and just bar chorded it and hit it. And he was like, his whole arm, it was all about like this show.
Okay.
And I hadn't had a teacher show me that before. And I was like, huh.
Like a Pete Townsend sort of thing.
Yeah, it was totally like, do it like Pete Townsend, or you can do it the way we're going to do it here. And, you know, this is, and in his mind, it was American versus English.
Okay.
Not necessarily true, but that's how Richard presented it to me. And if you know Richard, he's a hoot. So he the way he says stuff, it's always entertaining.
Yeah.
So I always thought that was actually really cool that he said that to me as a kid, because I realized I had this core of learn the chords, you know, learn how they go together, learn other people's songs, so you can start to feel how songs come together and where guitar solos come in, and how the best guitar, my favorite guitar solos, why did they stick out to me? Was it because they were flashy? No. It's because there was an emotion and I caught it, you know? And so, okay, I'm figuring that out. And then I get a guy that teaches me a lesson that's like, okay, so now you know all that. Like, so when you play that, play it with style, you know?
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, okay, so you do that too. So you put a little show on when you're doing it. Okay, cool. Yeah. And I think that was...
It sounds better when you do that too. It just ends up sounding better.
Your whole body's into it, you know? Well, not even your body, like your whole being becomes part of that sound.
Yeah. I don't know what literally is transpiring there. Mm-hmm. Like if you play the exact same thing, but if you just, I mean, I can theorize little things, but if you're just feeling it, it just sounds different. It's crazy.
It really is. And I've played shows. My favorite show I ever played, it was a band, Superfuzz, that I was in. We were in North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Monday of spring break, not a soul there, us and the bartender, and we destroyed it. In fact, the other band that was supposed to go on after us just packed up. They're like, we're out of here. And they're like, because nobody's here. And they're like, no, we're just out of here. But it was that where it was like you didn't care and you put everything you had into that moment, and you know it feels good. It sounds good. It feels good. It's cool.
So back to the practicing thing again?
Yeah.
What were some things that you mentioned? The vibrato, and that was cool. I'm interested to hear more about certain specific things that you practiced. Maybe how you organized it, or just how you figured out your practicing.
Okay,
because that's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I think guitar players want to start showing off. Like even when we're by ourselves, I taught lessons as well, and it was like everybody wants to come in and start shredding, you know, and it's like. I've learned that if it's no different than doing yoga, and you stretch and you become part of that moment, and then you can do a little more, and you do a little more, and your mind and body and hands and everything start working together. So I still to this day will do the same warm-ups that I did when I was in 6th grade. Mm-hmm. I work on the coordination between my pick and my fingers, and I'll go every step, every fret, but I do an alternate thing up and down the neck, the entire neck, up and down. And that gets, and I can tell when my, because there's days you play and you know that you like your hands are like not gonna work, not gonna happen, and then there's days that anything's possible, and I think I've lost some of that because I used to tour nonstop, so there was a part of my life where I knew I could do anything I wanted on guitar. Yeah. If I heard it, I could do
it all the time.
Yeah, and now I've noticed that I work full time and have kids and travel for work, and I don't get to play my guitar every day like I'd like to, that there are times that I have to warm up. I have to get my body ready and then get back into it.
Sure.
So I do that. I do pick and finger just up and down the neck, and then I also used to do stretches with my fingers. I still do that. I learned it from a drum corps. So if you take your first and third finger and put it in your thumb, and then your second and fourth, and you do that, it's a really good way to stretch out your hands.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a really nice way, and your hands will loosen up, and it feels so good.
Feel that.
You don't have to do it long. It's just enough to like get your body into it, and then when I'll do that right before we play. That also for me, I think has helped me with like nerves. Like if I'm playing big festivals and there's 20,000 people, it's like, so then I'm like, okay, just relax and get into my space.
Meditative in a way.
Yeah.
It's almost like that.
Yeah.
That pose, or I'm going to say that again real quick. So you bend your first and third finger to your thumb, and then you put those back as you're bending the second and fourth finger to your thumb.
Yeah. It's a drum corps technique for drummers.
Okay.
So they don't wear their wrists and their forearms out. But
That's cool.
I saw that from a core, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna start doing that, and I've been doing that ever since. That I learned that in high school, I think, or early college.
Interesting.
But it's nice. I mean,
people try that.
yeah, it works for me. I mean, somebody else might be like, that sucks. Plus, I kind of feel like I'm doing the metal sign.
I know, that's what I was saying. Yeah, like,
so I like that.
It's like that. Yeah, or the shocker.
yeah, exactly.
So then, did you ever have any times where you were like really struggling with something?
Oh yeah.
What were some of the things that you felt you struggled with most in those earlier years?
I think I think my struggle more comes from songwriting. I know that like I wanted to get into jazz a little bit, and well, I didn't want to get into it a little bit. I wanted to get into jazz as a kid and try to figure that out in high school. And just because I saw that as those are really skilled players,
sure.
and I wanted to be skilled.
Was there a jazz band at school too?
There was. I played bass in it.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't have a guitar spot. I ended up stealing the bass and the amp, and I got in trouble. I had to bring that back. I was a bit of a heathen. I stole the entire PA. They're like, do you have all our stuff at your house? Like, I do. I actually do. Yeah, I'll bring that home.
So not supposed to do that? Huh?
Yeah, I was like, I need it, man. We're working on this Cars cover. So I think that seemed cool. Well, playing trombone, and then I got to play bass, and that was fun. And I had a Ripper bass, which was like Gene Simmons, so that was cool. Like the school had the bass, and I just I loved gear, and I loved sound, and I loved music, and I loved tone. So it was kind of cool to hear all the different layers and stuff coming together. So I wanted to learn jazz guitar, but I know I just struggled with it. But a struggle for me is I'm really lazy. I mean, honestly, when it comes to playing, like if something's difficult, historically, I just will be like, I don't need to do that. Mm-hmm. There's other great players out there that I'll just listen to it and enjoy that. But that's not necessarily the right approach. That's just what I've always been. But I've always been touring and making records and trying to get to a point where I could pay my mortgage. That
sure.
was always the goal. It was like to survive playing music. Now that's not really the goal anymore, and I learned that really from John Garcia. When he and I were hanging out one night, he said something that kind of changed my whole life in that regard. And I was at that point, now that I've switched, now I do want to look back and say, you know what, I know I can play jazz. I was just too lazy. I didn't want to put the effort into it, and now I do.
That's one other beast.
Yeah, and so I'm always searching, and I'm always wanting to find something that excites me, And I saw this Neil Young interview the other night with Dan Rather, I think is his name.
Is that the big interview?
Yeah, did you see that?
No, I didn't know he did one of those. Gene Simmons did one. Did you watch that one?
No, I can't stand watching Gene Simmons anymore.
Oh, really?
Is it good? Oh, I'll have to watch it.
It's really good. It's not your typical Gene Simmons
because he annoys me.
Yeah, no, it's really deep, man.
Oh, I'll have to watch it.
Dan Rather is just awesome.
He's a great
I love
interviewer.
interviews, I love interviews. That's why I like doing this, too.
Yeah.
Because I like watching them.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, Neil Young said something about, like, where he kind of goes away into a space, and I do that, like when I'm playing, everything else is gone, and it just becomes this sound and this energy and this music that's just happening. And I love when that happens with a band and it works,
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like Luna Sol, this band that I'm doing out here, it's just starting to get to that point where it's like I close my eyes and there it is.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of work to get it there, but I don't practice every day. I make myself, it's very limited time that I have to work with everybody. So, or not, like that doesn't sound right, to practice and become a band. But Neil Young was saying that, like, the older he's gotten, he's found it harder to find that space.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, I wonder if that's the same for me, because, like, you have all these other things taking over your headspace. My kids are older. I worry to death about them. It was like all these things, and so I wonder if that space is taken up. So I don't know. I'm always trying to find that.
Yeah.
Not like a high. It's more like a wonderment that we get to experience as musicians that most everybody else maybe doesn't ever get to feel.
It's kind of like transcending a little bit.
Yeah.
From the reality.
Yeah, and I think if you do the work and lessons and the core foundation of what you need to do to play, you do find that space where you're not looking at the guitar anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you do just slip away.
Yeah, definitely.
But you have to have that bass. I mean, people have said my whole life, like, how are you playing these riffs and singing, and how are you doing that? I was like, I don't even think about the guitar. Like, I'm trying to vaguely remember the lyrics. I know I don't remember them, so it's like, I don't know. It said something about a lake right here, so I'm going to sing about a lake. But I don't think about the guitar. It just is on autopilot.
Yeah.
And I love that, because then when I sit back and I lean my head back and I hear the guitar, it's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're just listening and enjoying and experiencing rather than focusing on what do I have to do.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, it's not work at that point. It's just getting to enjoy it.
So you were saying about the struggles, like, what were some things you were trying to learn jazz or something? I mean, what were some things that, like, for instance, some people will be like, man, I just have trouble getting my right hand speed up, or my left hand, I just can't switch chords. Like, did you have some particular things like that were difficult for you?
I think early on, just switching chords is always difficult. That was hard, but I just would sit there and not even use my right hand, and I would just go from chord to chord to chord to chord, and not in any pattern. I would just tell myself, okay, F, G, just keep hitting different chords. And
just the left hand, not even strumming.
Just the left hand. I did that for hours.
Yeah.
For days, for hours.
Awesome.
Until I just knew that I didn't have to think about where, an F was anymore. And I was just doing bass.
Is that something you just figured out too on your own to do that, or were you told to do that?
No, I probably had a teacher that told me. I don't remember, but I can't imagine at that age being like, I've got to do this. I'm sure somebody said this is a good way to go about it.
Do you think it's pretty fair to say though that it came pretty naturally to you?
Yeah, guitar playing. Yeah. I'm very, very lucky. I mean, yeah.
Did you learn ever theory stuff at all? Because you were getting into jazz. Mm-hmm. Did that ever become a thing for you, or was that a thing originally in some way? Learning scales and...
Yeah, I did. I studied arts administration. I actually created a degree that's now offered at UK with about 6 of us were doing it at the same time, because we wanted to study like business and some minor law to understand contracts, but performance and then music. And it's basically a bunch of minors that created a major.
You created a degree.
Well, I was blessed that the dean of the arts school had come from Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
And had connections with the Plasmatics. So when I walked in and hung out with her, she was like, I want you to know I get where you come from, kid.
Yeah.
And she was another influence in my life. Dr. Boccia, just an amazing person. So yeah, we sat down and she was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, this is what I want to do. And she's like, let's do it. It'll be independent. And now it's actually a real degree. So, but there were
like
some
unique things happen, huh?
I'm lucky, man. I think that I think that I've got my own spiritual views, and they're not really tied completely with any organized religion. But I think that we come back many times in life and we relearn and we reconnect with people that we've known and energies we've known. And I believe that I've gotten to touch a lot of people that are instrumental in me becoming a good holistic person that I ultimately want to be. Not there. I've got a lot of work to do, but I think that looking back and telling sharing stories like this, I'm realizing it even today, like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if it's the right place, right time, as much as there's just been I've been very blessed to have some really good energies around me that keep coming around me to guide me in certain ways.
Yeah.
Not to be really, off the charts, but that's how I believe.
So it is what it is then, right?
Yeah.
And how you perceive it to be.
Yeah. So I think a lot of that's happened. And even in that space, music in college, like my piano teacher, he came to see me play. I was in a band still with John McGee and David Barrick. We all went to the same college.
Okay, crazy.
We ended up getting a record deal. That's how I met John Garcia and all the Caius guys, that we were in that band that we had started in 6th grade, at the end of 5th grade. But I went in and the guy, I had to take piano, and I wanted to learn jazz. Yeah. And I was like, all right, I can't learn it on guitar. Can you teach me Chick Corea? And I had studied it in high school a little bit with a guy in town that was teaching me some Chick Corea, and I was really digging it, and I was like, I suck at it. I really want to get better. And he was like, hey, so I saw your band play. And I was like, oh, yeah. We were called JB and the Five Blind Boys, and we wanted to be NRBQ at the time. We're like total, like just monster, trying to be monster players. I don't think we were. and having like fun about all of our songs. So it was just kind of a goof. But he saw it. It was like, that was really cool. He's like, here's the deal. I'm going to come in every day. I'm going to smoke weed, and you're going to play guitar, and we're just going to jam, and you'll get an A.
Who was
after
this?
4 years. My piano teacher.
Oh, okay.
My instructor. So I never touched the piano in college. We just hung out, and he got high, and I played guitar.
That's hilarious.
But I got better.
Private performance, huh?
Yeah, and I got to play guitar in a different space because he was a great blues piano player. So we would just sit and play, and it was a trip.
Cool.
But again, that's another thing. It's like
So you didn't really end up touching the piano much then?
I never played the piano.
Okay.
Ever, not once.
So what happened with the
class.
jazz thing then? Did that kind of dissipate?
I think I think because it was a bit of a struggle for me, I just didn't feel like I connected with it. I thought, I love rock, man. I love that energy I get from music. I also like all kinds of other stuff, but like I just decided to let that be what it was and just keep playing the way I play. And I was like in a punk band and reggae band, and I got to college really trying to branch out. I met all these other musicians, so we would try all this different stuff, but it ended up always being me and John McGee and David Barrick. We would always just regroup our band. I mean, the one time that we really thought it was something different than what everybody else did, we did an all AC/DC night at a punk rock bar, nobody had done, and they were like, what are these kids doing, and people went nuts, and we were like, okay, we should do this. People like it. So we decided just to focus all our writing on simple, straight up rock songs. But those guys are both great players too, guitar players, drummers, multi-instrumentalists, and so it was really cool growing up with them because I think as people we learned a lot from each other.
Yeah.
And then as players we learned a lot from each other. So they were kind of teachers too the whole time.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then they probably kind of like there was motivation and support there as well, whether directly or indirectly.
Yeah, no doubt. And Greg is to this day one of my idols. I mean, I absolutely look up to him. We hung out at Black and Red one day when he was in town playing a show, and my wife was like, "You're like on cloud 9." And he was like, "Well, for anybody else that's like hanging out with Clapton, like that, he is my Clapton."
This is the Greg Martin guy you're talking about.
Yeah. And so he was always very encouraging to all of us, and would kind of just sit down and listen to us play and go, "It's really good, man, and you should try this and try that." And I just remember thinking special when we got time, like you got his attention. It was like, "Ooh, we must be doing something good."
Right.
So yeah, that was kind of cool.
It's interesting. I wonder how much he noticed that.
I don't know. I still tell him, even just a couple weeks ago, I was telling him what an influence he was for me in my life and playing, and just how grateful I am to have him in my life. He was an amazing guy.
Because it's weird the little things that we remember from people that influenced us in some way, and then to think that how big a part they could play in your life, and for that other person who said it, it was just simply just saying a sentence that maybe they didn't even think about sometimes, or it can mean such a big thing.
You're right. I think that's important. The devil's in the details, but so is all the positives in life. Like you have these little moments that seem like they're just a wisp, and yet they can really change your path.
That's why I take teaching so seriously, because we like to have fun with it and everything, but I never know, and the instructors never know that little thing you say might be one of the biggest things to the person who hears it.
That's really cool.
Just never know.
No, you don't.
I just remember that, sometimes you get the feeling like, okay, this is going to be an important thing, but other times just...
And maybe it's not when you think it is, like, I'm handing you this gem, and then they're like, what?
Yeah.
That's funny.
You're like, I don't know, he said something about something. Yeah.
And yet the one little thing that you said just as they're walking out the door, they're going to remember their whole life.
Yeah, right.
That's cool.
Because I have those memories myself, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like you do, too. I think everybody does.
Of course, yeah.
So then, so that was, you kind of, you had your start at guitar about 10.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you took some lessons, and then you went, you started a band pretty much right off. Well, you started a band before you took lessons, before you even knew how to play anything, right?
Yeah, well, Kiss Kids, we were blowing up.
Yeah.
In 4th grade.
Right. Big deal. And then And then you went on through high school, and you basically just continued doing more of that. Is that right?
Yeah, we went to college together to be in a band,
Yeah.
and we made sure we went to the same school. Johnny and I actually were roommates in college and ended up living together, and David had a girlfriend, so he had his own apartment, which we thought was a little weird to, be with the band, dude.
Yeah.
But she was awesome, so it was all cool. But yeah, just follow that same path and
Playing shows and recording stuff.
Yeah, and we really started recording when we were kids. I mean, we got David because of David's parents having the radio station.
Yeah.
I've been around recording because of David. I mean, he got a 4-track. Man, I would say we were recording 4 tracks. Had to be in like 7th or 8th grade, just on cassette.
Interesting.
And then we had a 1-inch 4-track tape machine, and we made a demo. We had a friend of ours, Leah Martin, that sang because she was super cool and hot. And so we realized that none of us could really attract anybody. So, and she wanted to be in a band. She's an amazing singer. So she came and sang, and we started tracking at the music store there, and then we would track at David's parents. And then when we went to college, David actually bought like a Fostex 16 and a console, and we helped him build out a studio. And I like the last 2 Hermano albums. We've never even seen each other. Well, we just made a record here at my home with the band Hermano that I'm in.
Cool.
And Johnny will fly in the late winter, and we'll do vocals here. But I've always been around recording, and I love that. I love tone, and I like songs, and I like the energy and watching it all come together. And they have their own different techniques you have to learn. And so, yeah, the recording started early on, and then we did that all through college too, and when we picked up the ear of a really well-known music attorney out of Chicago.
Interesting.
Yeah, whose dad actually used to manage Johnny Winter, so that's why we signed with her.
Cool.
I was like, your dad manages who? Done, sign it.
That's just not something that you hear too often about coming across an attorney. You hear coming across a manager or a booking agent or something.
Yeah.
An attorney is a little different.
I got to book and run sound at a club called the Thrash Can, punk rock bar, and met like Alex Chilton and different people. They Might Be Giants, all these bands coming through. And I did that for college credit. I went on the road to Kentucky Headliners when they were opening for Bo Syphilis. Well, they call him Bo Syphilis. But he lets them call him Bo Syphilis. He's a nut.
The second?
Yeah.
Hank the second, right?
Yeah. And I was in a band with Davey from Hank the Third too. Those guys are freaking nuts. But they... Like, I got to do that for college credit. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
Running a bar and hanging out. I was 19. I wasn't even supposed to be in there.
Right.
And I'm running sound and talking to these other engineers who are bitching because the PA sucked, every time. And I was just be like, hey, I'm so sorry. And I'll show you what does work. And yeah, this sucks. But the place is called the Thrash Can. Like, I don't know what you expected before you're loading today. I mean, it was like as big as your space, which is this amazing space. But when Alex Chilton from Big Star pulled in, he was not thrilled, So I learned a lot there, too, I think.
So how did the recording experience, because that's something I've been noticing for just in general, before I've actually been recording these conversations, when I had them before, it's always something that I found, and I did myself, that people that became really great guitar players had as a part of their experience from an early stage was some sort of ability to record themselves, which I guess is kind of only natural. Like you want to make a record, like just find whatever way you can to get as close to that as you can, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
So when something's recorded, it doesn't matter what quality it is, it's like that's your record. You did it. But tell me how you think what you learned from that, and how that helped you improve your guitar playing or songwriting or whatever it is that you were really trying to improve at the time.
I will never forget, and I always look for it when I'm recording now, that tone of layering guitars. And changing it slightly how I'm playing it, so it just makes this tone massive.
Right.
Like, I loved that as a kid. And one of our teachers in high school actually owned an actual high-end production recording studio. And so we would go to his, it was like a 30-minute drive over to his studio, and we would drive there and get to record. And
it's crazy. He's a high school teacher.
Yeah, Mr. Bittner. He ended up giving one of my friends his plate reverb a couple years ago, and the guy was like, "You're giving it to me?" He's like, "I don't want that crap." We're like, "Dude, that's so in right now. You know, that's worth a lot of money." But yeah, again, another blessing, you know, to be around people like that. And I'm sure, looking back on it, he liked the talent that he saw, but also our singer Leah was absolutely adorable and super cute, and she opened a lot of doors for us. But I think that, to me, that was always the coolest. And then getting to, like, I wanted to always sound like Thin Lizzy and Judas Priest. You know, like, how did they get those guitar layers? And then ultimately, as I got older, Randy Rhoads and hearing different people, like, how are they layering that? And I didn't know. But when I was a kid, when I was in 6th grade, I had 2 cassette decks. One that I had stolen from my brother and one that I had gotten, like, for Christmas. And I would sit there with a record and play along with it, and then I would play over that into another one and record my solo ideas, you know. So I started kind of learning that at a young age, and not only learning, like, the energy of hearing it coming together, but also hearing it back.
Right, yes.
And that's a big thing.
Definitely.
You know?
What ways did that prove to be useful to you?
I still listen to back constantly. I write by myself, and harmonies and ideas and everything, and I don't spend a lot of time. I'll never work on a song for weeks. I'll work on a song for like an hour and I'm done. And it's either a cool song and I either feel it or I'm not going to do it, because if I'm not feeling it, I don't want to work on it. I'm not trying to make money. I'm not trying to, like, I don't care about record companies. I don't care about, you know, any of that stuff. I just want to make music. Right. So, but I still will listen to it, and I walk my Rottweiler up through, you know, Arvada and up by the lake, or by my house in the nature preserve around the block, and I listen to that stuff as I'm writing it, because 2 things: it's easy when you're playing it to get excited about it and you hear it a certain way, but I think when you step away from an idea or a sound, you can start to hear it as a listener over time. I don't think we totally can, but I think we get a chance to start hearing it more as a listener than I'm playing this and this feels awesome.
Right.
So then I can help with arrangements, and does that riff really cool? Oh, well, no, you know what? Oops, I've already written that riff 8 times. You know, that's another song.
Sure.
I've done that. I've written a song and been like, that's awesome, and send it to Shanda and Luna Sol. She's like, yeah, I liked it the first time when you called it this. And I was like, oh, dang it. So I think hearing it back does a lot of things. I think as a player, it helps us when we're learning and we're in a lesson stage of the basics, you know, of the foundation. I shouldn't say the basics, but the foundation of playing. You get to hear yourself, and you can privately hear yourself naturally without judgment.
Yeah.
And be able to go, you know what? I thought that sounded awesome, but I need to work on that.
Yeah.
Or I think I'm a hack, but that actually sounds all right. Cool.
Better than I thought.
Yeah, so it's a good way to just experience what you're doing, I think, without having to put it out into a magnifying glass. Because once you hand it to somebody else, the world's critiques. Yeah. You know, and as they should be. Everybody has their own input of what they hear and digest, and then they explain how it affects them. So I think it's a real safe way to, as you're learning the foundation. I did a lot of that. Even if it's like just today, just recording something on a voice memo on your phone or something. Yeah. Just whatever way you can. I do that all the time. Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. And it's weird. My son writes everything in notes and on his voice memo. So that is a really interesting thing. Are you good on time? Yeah, I'm okay. Okay. Because that sounds like, you know, most of your childhood experience. Mm-hmm. But we still got a long way to go, right? I'm a talker. Sorry. I just mean you've just been doing it for so long. Yeah, oh no. So you've got all the stuff after college now. So then you started having a professional career with it, right? I mean, as far as what I understand. Yeah. So what was the process for you like? And again, like, there's so many cool stories, and I want to hear. There's probably more cool stories than we even have time to talk about, right? Especially now that we're at the really cool stage now, right? Yeah, there's a lot of stories. Yeah. Some I don't remember. Sure, yeah, right.
But for as far as, you know, keeping it centered around what learning the guitar was like for you, how was everything during your professional career? How did you evolve as a guitar player? What things did you learn? You know, that kind of thing.
I learned when I got out of college and I was strictly playing guitar. I was signed. We were touring. We were making records. It took away from my love of guitar. It became a business very quickly. And like I had to go on tour with Yngwie Malmsteen, and
really?
I remember telling the president of the record company, who had signed James Taylor, Bob Seger, the Eagles, he'd signed major, and I loved this guy. He was freaking awesome. Would love to sit down and see him and buy him dinner today. Like he was just an amazing person. And he called me. He's like, our manager called and said, "Oh, you're going on tour with Yngwie Malmsteen." I was like, "No, I'm not going on tour with Yngwie Malmsteen." And he was like, "Yeah, you are." And I was like, "No way in hell am I going on tour with Yngwie. Like, call up the Black Crowes, get us on tour with Pearl Jam. They were all new."
Your band was going on tour.
Yeah, like we're going out to open for them.
Yeah,
no way. And so that moment, this changed me. And why I'm sharing that story is Bob called me and said, the owner or the president of the record company, and he asked me how the check cashed, and it was a big check, you know, for 3 young kids from Kentucky getting 6-figure checks. That was pretty massive, and those days are gone now, but that's where it was back when I was a kid. And that's so awesome. It was like, well, what do you mean? Yeah, the check's fine, like everything's cool, you know, I just went and bought another Les Paul, like I'm happy. And he was like, yeah, when you cash that check, you lost the ability to tell me who and when you're going to play, who you're going to play with and when you're going to play. I'll see you in Philadelphia next week. And I was like, okay. And I was like, this is not cool, you know? Yeah. And even our friendship started to dissolve, and David left, and we got somebody else on bass. And it became about what band can we tour with. And it wasn't about music. So I think musically, it really started to dissolve for me at that point. And I just wanted to play guitar again, like, you know? And so I think, where did all the lessons and everything I learned go? It was always the safe place when there was craziness going on to sit and pick up a guitar and cry because my grandmother died and write a song for her, or pick up a ukulele and try to write an angry song, which you can't. I can't. It's like always happy, doesn't matter. So I think knowing that foundation and having that core of lessons and the basics of what we all get to do when we love music, you know, and we love playing an instrument, it's kind of a safe place to get to go to, and my place. It's like I don't have to answer to anybody or anything if I'm just doing it for myself and in my place. Yeah.
So you don't need anybody else to participate for you to do it either. You can just do it. Yeah, I love being in a band. I love hearing a song come together, you know. I love that. I just think there's nothing cooler. But that probably goes back to being in 5th grade, you know, orchestra, like trying to play that trombone and making everybody work together. I think it all ties together. But I think the basics and the foundation that I learned from Jeff Sexton, Richard Young, and Greg Martin, and Kenny Weber as my teachers were above and beyond actually playing, and more about being a good person. They're all very amazing people. But musically, it was always, this is yours. And no one can mess with that if you just sit and surround yourself in it. It's kind of a long-winded answer, but it's a good one.
It's that peace that I get to experience when I go sit out behind I call a tree in my backyard the wishing tree, and I go out there with my J200 guitar and play, and it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters, you know? And I couldn't have done that and wouldn't have been able to do that without those people teaching me how to make chords and get between the chords and how to structure those chords into a song and all of that.
So what's interesting is you said your son's playing now.
Yeah, my son and my daughter plays a little bit too, but yeah, my son definitely plays.
How old is your son?
He is 18.
Okay. How long has he been doing this for?
He started a band. He announced to me that he was going to start playing music in January, and started his band in March and played his first show in August. He came out when he was out, and he lives in Kentucky with his mom and is finishing school there with his friends, and he was out at spring break and wrote 2 songs in a week and blew me away. It was like Depeche Mode, old, like early Depeche Mode stuff, and I was like, oh, you've been listening to Depeche Mode? And he's like, who? Yeah. So when I played it for him, he's like, oh my God, that's so weird.
Yeah.
So, and I think some of that stuff's really cool too, when you hear stuff and you've never heard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
totally.
That's bizarre. So yeah, I mean, but his writing style and watching him learn is very different.
How long did you say he was doing this? When did he get started with music?
He just this year.
Just this year?
January,
okay,
yeah.
I missed that because I guess I just...
Yeah, so January, and then he started his band, I think, in March, and I just saw him play their first show.
That's nuts.
Yeah, I want their band to be called The Perverts. I think it's a great band name. He won't do it. I'm like, I'll design the T-shirts. He's like, no, Dad.
Yeah, you could have a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah, he's like, you're not touching the band. All right, cool.
Well, then again, if I was a pervert, I would touch the band.
Yeah, fair enough.
But what have you learned from that? Because that's kind of a unique situation that you have now, having a son that's getting into that. Have you learned anything for your own self and your own playing just as a musician? Like how you said you were surprised by what he was able to pull off. I mean, does anything come from that for you?
Well, I think more for me, I'm obviously a proud dad and love my kids more than anything in the world. But watching him play for no reason than just to hang out with his friends and play, I think is really cool, because I didn't do that for a long time. I played to get on this tour, played to get on that tour, made a record to get in front of this label, or somebody was flying us over here, and we got to write a demo to get there. And there was always a reason to have to do it for about 15 years or 20 years. And I'm in a place now that I get to play music whenever I want to do it, however I want to do it, and I'm very blessed to get to do that in 2 really cool bands. And to see him doing that like I did when I was a kid just really reminds me of my friends. And I get a little nostalgic thinking about growing up and, having those friends and even other friends that I've done. Dean Smith, a bass player, I've got great friends that we played music just to play music.
So it kind of reminds you of what it was all about at that time for you.
Yeah, and what it really should be about. Yeah. For me, that's how I feel. It really should be about... he could care less. This place they played was packed. He could care less that anybody was in there. Yeah. He was having so much fun with his friends that they were playing these songs, and I remember that. It's been a long time, It was a long time that I didn't get to feel that way, and I do now, But that was big, But I think for me, musically, with my son, we just played Hellfest with Hermano, and in front of thousands and thousands of people.
Saw a video.
Yeah, it was fun, and Evan came over. That's not my daughter's thing. She doesn't really dig what we do, but I took my son and my wife, and we hung out in France, and then we went over and played the festival, and it was really cool. He helped me set up, and he's never done that, and we're hanging out with all these other bands that he knows and likes, and they're just normal people, so we got to see that. It's not like a big, huge drug fest. It's just, most of them are dads. Like, everybody's hanging out. It's about music, know? And I thought that was really cool to share with him. But then when I was playing, one of my favorite moments was right before we played. There's nobody in these tents, and they hold like 5,000 people each tent, but there's thousands and thousands of people there, and there's all these bands. And he was like, "Oh, Dad, I hope people show up to watch you play." And I was like, "Oh, they'll show up, don't worry about it." Then there was like 8,000 people watching us, and it was over the edges. And I looked out, and I was playing, and I love playing in that band because we do it just because we want to. That's it. No reason, not for money, not for anything other than that we're all great friends, and we do it because we love each other. And what we do is special to us, Yeah. And so I'm playing guitar, and I was really digging the sound of Marshalls, because there's no better sound of Marshalls on that 220 Power over in Europe. That's how they were made, and they sound amazing.
I never thought about that.
They sound amazing over there. So I was just like, "Oh, this is great." And I look out, and my son and my wife are about 4 or 5 rows back, just slammed in with all these people. And they're both smiling, and he goes, "They came!" And I was just like, "Oh, what a cool moment in life," like to see this kid that's been around music, and he's been around everybody his whole life, these well-known people, and it's never faced him. He could care less. But to see this innocent moment where he was just enjoying music, and getting to experience his dad playing, I think that was as special for me as also getting to see him play. So both musical moments of kind of passing the torch a little bit. But
absolutely.
Very cool.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah.
So we talked about from your very, very beginnings to, just the point where you were able to pursue it as a profession. And anything that you would say, like, final things that were just like super important for you with the learning process that you would leave people with?
Yeah, I think a couple things that people told me, and I just kind of figured out on my own, and that's to learn and never give up on the foundation. Like, you always have to go back to those finger exercises and connecting your mind and your fingers and your soul so that you can do what you can do. I think that's really important. The foundations of the scales and the chords, those have to become ingrained in you, so working on those until you feel that, wow, I just did that and I didn't even think about it. I can remember doing that and as a kid and not thinking about the solo, and then all of a sudden being like, I just played that solo. Yeah. And I think those are really important moments. But I think a key element to playing music, whether you're playing it in your room, or you're playing it around in front of 20,000 people, like, surround yourself by good people, because we become, I think, as people and musically, not only just we are as the core of people, but also musically, that circle of 5 people around you. And so if you have good influences to be a good person, then and it's really truly about music, and loving music, I think that is just as important as learning the basics and learning the foundation and constantly evolving the other pieces of it, because then you have a foundation of great playing, to get you to great playing, but you also have a foundation of being a solid person, which always brings, I think, positives in our life, and that's kind of looking back now. There were moments that I was on dark paths that I didn't surround myself by the right 5 people, I didn't have
definitely
those influences. Keep playing and love it, and know that you're going to have great days. There's going to be days that you can't believe you just played that. And there's going to be days that you think, I can play that. Why can't I play it?
Yeah.
That happens to Clapton. That's going to happen to somebody that's been playing for a week. It just happens.
Right.
And that's powerful stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, I think that was awesome. People listen because this guy is a freaking awesome guitar player.
I'm a hack, for sure. But
well, then he's a pretty awesome hack, then, if that's the case.
No, thanks, man.
Yeah, and then, of course, you've got Luna Sol.
Yeah.
So that's something that you mostly just keep around here in the Denver area, from what I've noticed?
Yeah, we released the record in Europe. We're talking about doing something, but I really just like to have it here. I like to play once a week at my house in Arvada, and the neighbors are cool, and play once a month in town, and it's nice. Build friendships and write songs.
Yeah. So then lunasol.com or something? Or
the site is lunasol.us.
.us. Okay, and then of course on Facebook, right? You guys got your Facebook page.
Yeah.
And it's just the one record out right now? Is that right?
Yeah, we've written 25 tunes for the next record. We're going to start that this fall in my house here in Arvada.
Okay, sweet.
So yeah, it's cool. I'm liking where it's going a lot.
And that first record can be found on the website, iTunes, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's on all of those.
If you want to check it out.
Yeah, it's released worldwide. It's out on Cargo in all of Europe, overseas, and then it's on Slush Fund here. But you can get it at our site or Spotify. I've got the label doesn't like it, but I've got a free SoundCloud link. So if you just want to go listen to it, go listen to it.
Okay.
I don't make money. They don't pay me for those records.
Yeah. And then of course Hermano.
Yeah.
And I think I got the impression that it's been a while since you'd played
Yeah, we do Hermano whenever we want to do Hermano.
Okay.
And we started writing about 3 years ago, and everybody came out, this year, and we tracked 12 songs in 5 days. Wrote, tracked, and mixed it like it's rocking.
And that's yet to be released, right?
Yeah, it's not out yet. We're gonna lay vocals down on it with Johnny, and then it'll come out next year probably. But if it comes out the year after, like, we don't care. I mean,
sure.
We make music to make music.
Yeah, you just want it to be right. No pressure to get it out. It's just wait. It goes out when it's ready to go out.
Yeah, it's all about friendship.
Right.
You know, both these projects are. It's just about being friends and making music, and so there's no boundaries around it, and there's no deadlines.
Right. Thank you so much for doing this.
Man,
it's really
you.
Cool.
I really enjoyed it.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
It's nice to relive some stuff.
Yeah.
That concludes the third episode. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed hearing about Dave's stories and how he approached learning the guitar. For the next episode, I will be talking with Rory Rummings of the riff-heavy and subtly progressive Denver rock band Cloudcatcher. Rory is a true prodigy and just commands the guitar as he shreds it to pieces. So be sure to subscribe to the Guitar Power Hour YouTube page and like our Facebook page so you can catch that episode as well as other future episodes. I want to thank Dave Angstrom for sharing his stories and perspectives, and be sure to look up his bands Hermano and Luna Sol. Also, if you are in the Denver area and are interested in learning guitar, check out our sponsor's website, rocklifemusicacademy.com, for information on the unique guitar lesson program. Catch you on the flip side, my people.